Welcome everybody to today's webinar and our new joint partnership with Intello. My name is Phil Merson. I'm the Director of ITAM Consulting Services within SHI, and I'm your host today with SHI in this webinar, and look forward to introducing our new partnership with Intello as we go through this webinar. You may have seen a media launch recently that went out introducing our partnership with Intello. And on the back of this, I look forward to introducing them to many customers worldwide. To that end, I'd like to introduce Barak Kaufman, the CEO of Intello, who's going to lead us through this presentation today. And I'll pick up later to extend our information around the services around the Intello and SHI partnership. So Barak, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Phil. Hello, everyone. Happy Quarantine Tuesday. Thank you for joining. I know many of you are joining from your homes today, and I know that everyone's going through a pretty difficult time at the moment, personally probably, and for the world. So appreciate you taking the time today, and I hope you find it informative, and I'm pretty confident it will be worth your while. Very quickly to introduce myself. My name is Barak. I am the CEO and co-founder of Intello. We are a SaaS management platform. To Phil's point, we just launched a partnership with SHI. And what we're going to be talking about today is SaaS management, everything SaaS management, understanding SaaS utilization, understanding spend, how to manage all these different applications, and a lot of other trends in the market. I am also happy to talk a little bit about how Intello and SHI's partnership can help a lot of your organizations in a post-COVID world. There's a blog post that was just launched related to the topic that we can share after as well, but I'm happy to talk about it today and answer any questions in the Q&A towards the end. So as Lauren mentioned, to kick things off, and I know more of you have just joined, if you do have questions, feel free to post it in the chat or post it in the Q&A section. Let's jump right into it. We're here to talk about SaaS today. This is a slide that we like to start with, kind of set the picture. This is the growth of SaaS applications, but looking at it from a little bit of a different lens. What this graph actually shows are the amount of organizations that are purely run on SaaS-based applications. So many of your orgs from where you're joining today, some of you might have a tech stack that is already SaaS first. Or some of you might be going through your digital transformation right now, or some of you might be planning a digital transformation effort. But I think for many of you, the growth and proliferation of SaaS applications is probably more or less intuitive, right? More and more organizations are being run on SaaS applications. But what this graph and this data actually really shows and highlights are the amount of organizations that will be basically purely run on SaaS-based applications. And these stats and projections actually came out before 2020. And I'll talk in just a minute about how all the COVID response may actually accelerate this trend even further. A few stats just to kick things off. 1, 80% of an org's tech stack will be made up of SaaS by 2022. So 80% of an organization's SaaS applications or software applications are going to be SaaS-based. Second stat here. 73% of organizations state that nearly all of their tech will be SaaS-based by 2020, apologies. So what this stat is actually highlighting is that by the end of this year, 73% of organizations in the world, this was a global survey that was done, state that nearly all of their tech stack will be run on SaaS-based applications. So we'd like to make this a little bit more interactive and start out with a poll. You should see a poll jump up on your screen in just a minute. This first question that we have for you is, how many different SaaS apps would you estimate are in use at your company? We'll give everyone a few minutes to answer the poll. You should see it pop up on your screen. Again, the question is, how many different SaaS applications would you estimate are in use at your organization? Choice A is less than 100. I don't think anyone has less than 50. If you do, you almost for sure have more. Choice B is 101 to 200. Choice C, 201 to 300. D, 301 to 400, E, 400 plus. We'll give everyone just a moment. So in 5 seconds, we're going to close out the poll. If you see the question pop up, please respond. All right, great. Thank you for responding. So as you can see in the results, hopefully many of you are seeing it on the side of your screen. The vast majority of you actually are not entirely sure, and that's what I'm going to interpret by the lack of answering the poll. And then the second most answered is 101 to 200 applications. I think this stat might blow some of your minds. The average organization with over 300 employees, so relatively low employee count, has 183 free applications in use. Again, just to explain that stat, the average org with over 300 employees has 183 free. These are the shadow IT applications, the free applications that aren't being expensed, that aren't going through purchase orders that the average organization has. Again, 183 free SaaS applications. So many of you, 20% of you answered that you have between 101 and 200 total applications. That likely is a lot more from what we've seen if you just factor in all of these free applications that employers are signing up for often on their own with a corporate email account. The average 300-person company has 3 times more SaaS in use by employees than IT even knows about. This is actually a stat that we've pulled from our client base, and I'll share in a moment what exactly Intello does, which will make more sense. But on average, organizations have 3 times more SaaS applications in use than what is known. So for all of you that have a lot of formal policies in place and ways to actually purchase application and rules to go through purchase orders and go through procurement and go through IT and security, you probably know that you have shadow IT. You might not realize that for many of you, it's going to be 3 times more applications. So if you answered that you had 101 to 200 applications, way more likely, it's somewhere in the vicinity of 300 to 600, depending on your org, maybe larger. All right, going back to the interactive side, we have another poll here for all of you. How are you currently tracking your SaaS applications, your SaaS spend, and the usage? You should see the poll pop up just now on the right side of your screen. Choice A, spreadsheet. Many of us, I'm sure, have spreadsheets. Choice B, multiple spreadsheets across different departments. Think of finance group having their own spreadsheet to manage applications, compliance, legal, IT, procurement, a lot of the different orgs. Choice C, a SaaS management tool. You might be using a SaaS management platform provider. Or D, not at all. Again, how are you currently tracking SaaS spend and usage? You should see a poll on the right-hand side. We'll give everyone 10 more seconds to answer. How are you currently tracking SaaS spend and usage? Close out the poll. Let's give it a second to see the results. All right, it seems that a small portion of you actually have a SaaS management solution. About 20% in aggregate have some form of spreadsheets, and about 5% don't have anything at all, spreadsheets or a SaaS management tool. And my guess is there probably are spreadsheets you might not know about. Let's talk about this problem, what we refer to as the SaaS management nightmare. This is the problem that Intello and with the partnership with SHI address. It's what we refer to as SaaS sprawl. Employers are signing up for new applications every day and all the time. while you're tuning into today's webinar or watching the recording, you likely have multiple applications that are entering your environment through employees signing up for them. Now, if you remember the stat from a few slides before, the average 300-person org has 183 free SaaS apps in use. Some of these applications that employees are signing up for are completely free. It could be an email tracking tool that they're adding to just track emails that are being sent to prospects or clients. Those free applications pose a risk to your organization. There's also all the rogue purchasing that's getting done. That rogue purchasing can be done at a department level. The different departments are purchasing applications on their own without actually consulting with IT, security, or finance or procurement. There's also individual employees using personal credit cards or corporate credit cards and expensing that software to the company. So you have all this rogue purchasing, rogue signups of applications being done that's leading to a SaaS sprawl nightmare. Even if you forget all the rogue purchasing, it's likely chaos to just manage your existing software environment and all the vendors that you actually know about. And what we usually see is that there is kind of what we refer to as a SaaS SWAT team that's usually led by the CIO or the senior IT team within an organization. This SaaS SWAT team is tasked with making sense of all this data, identifying all these applications that are in use across the organization, trying to figure out the compliance and security footprint, making sure that you're able to actually respond to auditors and comply with GDPR and CCPA and all the new compliance and privacy regulation. Part of that SaaS SWAT team, that task force that's led by the CIO and IT team, is actually involves consulting with the different department leads. It involves actually working with the CMO and the head of the marketing team to understand what applications they have in use. And usually that person's involved in the SaaS SWAT team. It's working with legal as it relates to legal and security and compliance risk for the different applications. It's working, of course, with finance and procurement on making sense of all the spend and all the subscriptions and all the renewals that are coming up and all the licenses that you're actually procuring and trying to understand the actual utilization of those licenses by auditing each one of them or trying to work on a manual basis to actually consolidate all the spend, purchasing data, all the usage data, all the compliance data. And it leads to a ton of what we call SaaS headaches. Data shared in disparate systems. 20% of you said that you have spreadsheets in place within your organization that you're using to actually manage these applications. All of a sudden, you lack visibility into all those different software subscriptions, and even more challenging, the utilization of those different applications, all this purchasing that's been done in the past, and all the purchasing that's still going on. Are people actually using those licenses? There's tons of wasted spend. The wasted spend happens with over purchasing licenses that you're not using, so those inactive licenses, but it also happens from redundancies in your tech stack, duplicative software that actually do the same thing. Do you really need a 12th, 13th, 14th project management solution within your org, or would it actually benefit the entire organization to be on the same platform and be able to collaborate more closely with each other? And then, of course, I've alluded to this. It's not just a spend challenge and risk to the organization and problem. It's also a compliance and security risk and problem. You have these unapproved applications entering your environment in many different ways, what's referred to as shadow IT. Not having visibility, not knowing what those applications are, is no longer an option. You can't not know. You need to know. You need that visibility because it's many of our responsibilities as the IT team or procurement team or finance team to oversee this purchasing and to oversee the compliance and security check. If applications are entering your environment that are not approved and any one of those applications has a data breach, that's all of a sudden your responsibility, especially with all the new compliance regulations. So again, just to kind of sum up, you have all these applications entering your environment from all these different channels and all these different angles, and it's your job to actually wrangle this SaaS sprawl. And the problem is it actually leads to not just a lack of visibility, but tons of wasted spend, lots of money being spent on applications that are not in use and licenses not in use, and tons of compliance and security risk and headaches. So before we talk about the solution to all of it, rest assured there is a solution. We're gonna ask one more poll over here. What challenges are you currently experiencing in managing your SaaS? You should see the poll go live just now. Again, what challenges are you currently experiencing in managing your SaaS applications? A, lack of visibility of apps in use, one of the problems we just talked about. B, wasted spend. Wasted spend is also coming to the forefront as part of IT cost rationalization exercises that all companies are doing now as in this current economic environment. C, unused or overlapping licenses and applications. D, lack of central ownership in shadow IT. E, time spent on renewals and provisioning. F, you become reactive to those renewals and might even miss some of those renewals. G, security concerns related to third-party apps and permissions. Or H, poor compliance across apps and usage. We'll give it another 5 seconds here. All right, great. So it seems like the vast majority of respondents highlighted A, lack of visibility of apps in use as the biggest problem. The second most answered were unused or overlapping licenses, which makes a ton of sense. And I think that overlaps with the wasted spend. Both of those are pretty similar. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the solution, which is a lot more fun than talking about the problem. So Intello is a SaaS management platform. We're here to help you solve the SaaS sprawl nightmare and the SaaS chaos. The way that Intello works is agentless. It's really simple. We usually are able to deploy Intello and get it live for a customer within a day or two of working with them. The way that we're able to do this is through a integration-based approach. Again, agentless and through integrations. There's a number of different integrations that we've built within our platform at Intello to help you with these challenges that you guys all just responded in this poll. Specifically, the lack of visibilities and the wasted spend seem to be the biggest concerns for the attendees that are part of this webinar today. The first kind of integration that Intello has is what we call our spend integrations, our financial integrations. Intello will provide visibility into your entire SaaS landscape, every application that you have in use. And the first way that we're able to do that is identifying every single application that you're spending money on within your organization. The way that we can identify every single application that you're spending money on, whether it's the $1 million a year, call it Salesforce contract, or the $10 per month email tracking tool that employees signing up for on their own, is through these different integrations. So firstly, we have ERP integrations. We integrate with NetSuite and Oracle Financials and SAP Concur and QuickBooks and Expensify and a lot of different ERP solutions to identify all the spend automatically. So let me explain this a little bit further. At Intello, we have a database of over 40,000 known software providers, known SaaS companies. Our algorithms are able to match that database with the raw vendor name in the payment files to actually discover every single software spend. So no matter how the software spend is getting categorized in the accounting systems and in the expense systems, Intello will find it. So our integration, Intello's integration, gets read-only permission into certain expenses and can actually find from the raw vendor name posted in these different systems every single software expenditure, the individual credit card purchases that employees might be expensing on their own, all the way to the larger purchase order or applications that you're purchasing through your SHI representative. So again, the goal there is to provide you visibility with every single software purchase, every single software subscription within your organization. The second part of this, though, and the second challenge, right, as it relates to SaaS management, is overlaying that spend with usage. Many of you said that the unused licenses and redundancies in your tech stack is one of the main challenges you're trying to solve. One of the biggest benefits of Intello is that we'll overlay that spend data, all that subscription data that we're actually going to find related to the vendors you're spending money on, and combine that with your utilization data. Now, the way we pull the utilization data is quite interesting. Again, it's integration based. So it's really simple to set up. The first way we're getting the usage data are direct integrations with applications. We integrate with close to 30 different applications, such as Salesforce, O365, Slack, Box, Dropbox, PagerDuty, DocuSign, many of the top SaaS applications that I'm sure a lot of you are spending money on. Intello has direct integrations with. Those direct integrations will pull in who's got access to a license and who's actually using that license for those different applications. Again, all of our usage data will come for those specific applications will come from those direct integrations. So for example, if you just deployed Zoom as part of your COVID response, we have a Zoom integration. Our Zoom integration with one click will pull in how many licenses you actually have, how many provisioned users, and who's actually using their Zoom application. And we'll show you the days active usage for all those different applications. So again, the first way we're pulling usage data are direct integrations. The second way we're pulling usage data from applications are through the single sign-on vendors. So we have integrations with Okta, OneLogin, Azure AD, G Suite's SSO provider, to be able to pull in every login through your single sign-on provider. So if you're using a single sign-on provider within your organization, where you're using Active Directory through Microsoft to secure user login, we will, with one integration into, let's say, Okta, be able to provide the usage visibility into all of the connected applications. So many orgs have hundreds of applications connected to their single sign-on vendor. We'll be able to pull in how many provision users you actually have and who's using it just through that one integration into the single sign-on provider. And then we have other ways that we surface usage data for you. For example, we integrate with Microsoft with O365 to be able to pull in every login or sign up that users do through their corporate O365 or G Suite account. So no matter if you're a G Suite shop or an O365 shop, if your employees are logging in or signing up to third-party applications, free or paid with that corporate account, we're going to be able to pull in that usage. And we're getting that directly from the audit logs of Microsoft and from Google. We also have a browser extension. We built our own browser extension that can be deployed within your organization that will also pull in SaaS usage in real time at an employee level. So the most important thing to note on the usage side is where Intello actually helps is we're going to overlay the spend data that we get from those financial integrations with the usage data that we get from direct integrations, from single sign-on, from browser extension, from all these different sources to be able to give you one clear view into how much you're actually spending on your different SaaS applications, how many licenses you have, how many provisioned users you have, how many of those are actually active, how many inactive licenses you actually have in your environment that is low-hanging fruit to actually save money on. The third piece here is help you strengthen security. One of the biggest challenges with SaaS-based applications is how easy it is to share data between different apps. Now, what this means is all the applications that have access to your corporate Slack account or corporate Microsoft Teams account or your corporate Salesforce account, all those connected applications on top of those are getting data, are getting access to the underlying data stored in those systems. That can be client data, that can be employee data, it could be some sensitive PII data, it could be financial data, it could be anything. For Slack, it could be what you think of your partners, colleagues, and friends is often shared in Slack. And any Slack bot sitting on top of it, and the same goes with O365 and these other applications, get access to that data and put your whole organization at risk. So if that small, call it Slack bot that is built by a handful of people that you've never heard about has a data breach, all of a sudden all the data that it got access to through your corporate Slack account is also breached. So this security side is real. The security side is a big challenge and a big problem in a SaaS world as it relates to managing and identifying the shadow IT, but also understanding these third-party permissions that are being granted to all these different applications. So what we do at Intello is we have a risk scoring algorithm. It will discover all those third-party permissions granted, let's say, that users have set up connected to Office 365, and it will score those permissions for you, high, medium, or low risk. A low risk, for example, would be if it could only view your basic profile information. A high risk would be if it could read, send, delete, and manage your email on behalf of your whole organization, right? So there's different levels of risk based on the permissions granted to these third-party applications, and that's another piece of visibility that Intello helps with. And ultimately, the end result with Intello is complete visibility into your SaaS application footprint and creating one centralized platform, one system of record for all these different applications across your spend data, your usage utilization data, and your security and compliance data. Ultimately, discovering the ways to spend, creating proactive renewal alerts for vendor management, for those of you that don't have a simple way to manage the renewals for all these different subscriptions, uncover all those unused apps and licenses immediately and show you how you can start saving money and over time as renewals come up, arm you with the data to help you in those negotiations. And then lastly, spot those risky apps and permissions that may be getting access within your org. Here are some of our amazing clients here at Intello. Super proud of the organizations we've been able to work with. I think what this slide really highlights, though, is this problem is not unique to a specific kind of organization. We have clients that range in vertical, that range in size. They can be as small as a couple hundred employees or as large as a couple 100,000 employees. So it really spans kind of the world. If you're purchasing SaaS applications, if your organization uses SaaS applications, which is basically everyone in every vertical nowadays, Intello is relevant for you and can solve the SaaS sprawl challenge. Let's talk about some of the values that clients get from using Intello, but really just from being able to get a hold of this SaaS application footprint. Workiva, publicly traded company that we work with at Intello, their team had a lot of spreadsheets in place and one attempt at a master spreadsheet before finding and ultimately moving to Intello. That spreadsheet was manual, it was dated, it took a lot of time for them to manage, and it got stale quickly, as I'm sure many of your spreadsheets do. It also was really poor, led to really poor visibility, right? It all depended on these manual audits, and when some employee would raise their hands and mention some application they signed up for, but it was very, very difficult to get that visibility. And lastly, the third challenge for them was renewals. Every one of these SaaS applications are purchased on a subscription basis, which really should mean that you have a new purchasing decision every year when that renewal actually comes up. But because it's so difficult to manage these long tail of SaaS applications, all with their own subscriptions, Workiva was struggling with it. Their leadership were asking questions, and they had no way to actually address them or ensure that they were getting out in front of renewals. And with Intello, we moved over all of that manual data in their spreadsheet into Intello, as well as provided automated visibility into all their different applications. So our full integration revealed all 360 SaaS tools that they had. They thought that number was closer to 100, and we found 360. It created an automated dashboard for their SaaS SWAT team to be able to collaborate. So for Workiva, that's a combination of procurement, IT, and information security. All three of those teams are looped in and using Intello for their own projects and challenges. And thirdly, it helped them with new onboarding checklists and processes. It's very difficult to manage onboarding and offboarding of employees in this SaaS-first world. It's very difficult to stay in front of these renewals and understand if people are actually still using these different applications. That's where Intello came in. Within 2 days, we were live with them, and we were saving also, I think it was actually closer to 3 days per month of time that they were taking on these manual audits. We also saved them a lot of money as a result and helped create a way more proactive system. One more case study of an example. So for Envoy, their challenge was actually more of a compliance and security challenge. They knew that they had wasted spend, but that wasn't their main priority. Their main priority was that they were dealing with, at the time, GDPR compliance and since then, CCPA compliance. And one of the stipulations of the compliance regulation is ensuring that you have full visibility over your processors and sub-processors, which are basically synonymous with your software vendors, because your software vendors actually get access to a lot of that data. And they were trying to do a lot of manual audits, and they had their own version of a spreadsheet set up to try to track all the permissions, all the compliance, what is approved, what is not approved within their organization. Not have a view into that application usage. They also have a culture that tries to encourage employees to work with IT to get approved applications into their environment. So they are very willing to work with employees to help them get the products and tools that they need. But they ask that it's a collaborative approach. Don't go sign up on your own, come to us, and we have a culture of saying yes, and we'll figure out how we can help you manage it. And that's where Intello actually ultimately came in. We were helpful in creating this bridge between the IT team and the employees, making sure that they had a view into what those approved applications are and what the unapproved applications actually are. We also created this bridge between finance and compliance that didn't really exist within Envoy. So we were able to make sure that the finance and procurement team were able to work with the IT and security and compliance team to ensure that all their applications are actually approved and they're on top of all the renewals and utilization. And then the discoverability. I think many of you said earlier in the poll that the lack of visibility was one of your biggest challenges. Intel provided automated visibility within hours of going live for Envoy. So again, the solution is really easy to get set up and immediately provides ROI by helping with that discoverability and helping to create a better way to actually manage all these different applications. So again, two different case studies, two different use cases. One was more focused in Workiva's instance on that SaaS usage, SaaS spend optimization, making sure you have visibility into all your subscriptions, understanding the licenses and the usage of the licenses, and helping with the consolidation and optimization. And with Envoy, more of an information security risk, more of a compliance risk as a result of GDPR and TCPA that really kind of accelerated this. And Intel was instrumental in creating that bridge between IT, compliance, and finance to be able to manage these applications, also create a bridge with employees, and helping with that culture of saying yes to approved applications, but needing to be able to work with employees and stakeholders to make sure all those applications are actually approved. So I'm going to hand it over to Phil now to speak a little bit more to the partnership side of how Intello and SHI ITAM team are working together. So Phil, feel free to jump in.
Thank you, Barak. Thank you very much indeed. Great presentation and a lot of content in there as well. So question, why did SHI partner with Intello? Well, SHI went through a thorough investigation into the SaaS management market and the products that are within that industry. And we found that Intello delivered everything we needed to launch that partnership, not only through the tool capability itself, but also through the incredibly knowledgeable individuals within the business. And you've just heard Barak talk about the industry and how the tool itself gathers all the information. And it is a phenomenal, has phenomenal capability. But this is a young industry, but growing really, really quickly. And we're already seeing a huge increase in demand from our customer base in SHI for help on understanding and managing SaaS applications. So we're really excited with this new partnership. We feel that the tremendous increase in SaaS application in our customer environments is only going to increase. And SHI are ready and prepared to help our customers get to grips with those SaaS applications. We're already seeing demand from our customers in seeking help, and we've launched a tiered service offering that our customers can utilize, where the skilled experience and resource is a requirement, but our services can now actually help our customers drive that success that Barak has talked through. So we split it up into 3 modules: Standard, Professional, and Premier. And those 3 modules are pretty simple, and we'll show you what's included in those in a second. But the Standard is a very simple entry level, low cost, seeing what you can save with summary overview of the utilization as well. Professional starts to get into a little bit more depth and gives detailed use recommendations and has a subscription fee around that as well. And the premium level or the premier level helps you really understand what those savings are and gives you the ability to implement those recommendations that we go through, and has a lot of process consultancy on the back of it. Process within ITAM is absolute, it's a requirement. And we know that if customers can utilize a tool like this to help make their savings, they need to implement certain policies and processes to actually make sure they continue to make those savings. Because otherwise, if you don't implement those types of things, you just go back to the same old, same old. You continue to fall into those old habits of allowing shadow SaaS applications into the environment. Those three tiers are broken down, as I said, to standard, pro, and premium. You can see very clearly that in the standard you get less than you do in the professional and in the premium. But as you can see, you get that software spend and potential savings in standard out of the box, renewal monitoring and contract management out of the box, and SaaS license usage monitoring out of the box. On the top of that, we then look at more consultative approach where we can give you real optimization recommendations, look at your redundancy around your software that you have in the organization, and also look at your GRC, your governance, your risk, and your compliance, and how that is sitting within your organization from a security perspective and also from a usage perspective. So it's a great sort of InfoSec or security team enabler as well. And then in the premium, we've got the automated workflows and alerting systems. We can look at contract review and recommendations as well, and obviously look at the implementation of those recommendations into your organization. We've seen already that customers are finding and looking at the recommendations, but actually struggling to do the implementation itself. So the SHI services actually help our customers actually engage and implement those recommendations, which is where the real value comes back to the customer. There's customized reporting, and also at the bottom there, you'll see a maturity and process alignment. And we find that this, as I mentioned earlier, is really important to our customers to understand how they're actually allowing SaaS applications into their organization today. How are they pulling through? Are they actually being expensed, or are they going through on a credit card, which might be expensed to something completely different to software, and therefore becoming shadow IT that Barak explained earlier? So implementing those policies and those processes within your organization is really going to help you drive those recommendations and make it become really sticky. Now, that is the end of the presentation and the webinar today, but I've already identified that there are questions coming through as well. So Lauren, can I hand over to you to look at the questions and actually start polling those questions through to Barak and myself?
Yes, absolutely. So it looks like we have a couple questions. The first one is probably for Barak. Does Intello integrate into SAP to gather spend data?
Great question. And I think I saw another question come through that I'll try to address with this as well. So as you saw in the slides, let me go back to the slide of how Intello works. There's three different pieces of data that we pull in: spend, usage, and security and compliance data. SAP has a ton of different products and modules that range from SAP Financials. It could be through HANA or through a more legacy version of like a traditional on-prem SAP instance, or it could be any of SAP's individual applications for usage. We integrate into some of their applications currently. Intello integrates with some SAP applications currently, but not all of them. Regardless, we should be able to support you and your organization because there's a number of ways that we pull in this data. So for example, on the spend side, and I saw another question come in on the spend side, so I'll try to kill two birds with one stone with this one. You don't need to set up the spend integrations. Some of our largest clients actually do not set up a spend integration and really focus on the usage and security and compliance data, because that utilization data is so key to optimization exercises, as well as understanding that shadow IT and those applications in your environment. So there's a few options if you do not want to set up the financial integrations. One is we have a CSV import. So if you have an export of your software applications or your software spend, and you do want to get that into Intello, and you want to do it on a regular cadence, our dedicated CSM can make sure that we're every month uploading just the raw export file of the software expenses if you don't want to set up an integration. Or if you don't want the software spend at all, that's perfectly fine, and you will get a ton of value from Intello without any software spend data there because of that importance on the usage side. So specifically with SAP, we integrate into some of the SAP products. We need to get a little bit more specific to understand if we can support that integration. But because we have a number of different ways that we pull data and we don't just rely on these direct integrations, I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to support your org, whether it's for SAP license optimization or just getting data that fit in one of your existing SAP systems. My recommendation would be reaching out to your SHI account exec to ask them to set up a personal call, and we can address any specific questions related to that SAP integration. And then the second question that I tried to answer here was the importance of software spend as we pull it in.
Okay, how about, how does Intello work? This one, Brock, as well for you. How does Intello work with existing SAM applications if a company already has one, such as Snow or Flexera? Would Intello be duplicative?
Great question. The software asset management market has existed for almost 4 decades now, 40 years. And there are a number of players that have existed for a while in that software asset management market holistically as well. I'm sure some of your orgs are using software asset management platforms. Those software asset management providers are really focused and built to solve the more traditional challenges of software management. Those traditional challenges were primarily license compliance and compliance with audits from the vendors, right? Which is when Microsoft, SAP, Adobe, Oracle, IBM go and audit their customers. Many of them use a third-party auditor. They go and audit their customers, and the reason that those software asset management vendors actually took off is they built a product that helps comply with those tech audits faster and make sure that you stay in compliance. And I'm sure for many of your orgs, you still have those applications in your environment, and therefore your existing SAM provider is probably pretty key in supporting that. For Intello, we are entirely focused on this SaaS challenge, the SaaS sprawl nightmare. And because of that, we're able to solve this problem in a way that those traditional vendors can't. So the answer is we are not duplicative. We are complementary. If you have a large SaaS footprint or you have challenges related to SaaS management specifically, that's when Intello will be relevant. And we could talk about how we actually support some of our clients through different integrations with their other software asset management providers or CMDBs that they use to actually host all their different assets. So great question. The answer is Intello is entirely focused on that SaaS challenge and solves a lot of unique problems that relate to SaaS applications. And if you have a large and growing SaaS footprint, those two solutions, the existing software asset management solutions and Intello, are complementary, not duplicative.
So a question came in about, I guess when you reference SaaS SWAT team that helps manage your SaaS sprawl, would that be an extension of the SAM team that the client may already have in place in terms of both in-house and an external SAM provider?
It's a great question. It's more of a catchy term that I like to use. Kenly was actually plagiarized by a client of ours that calls their internal team that's focused on wrangling these SaaS applications, their SaaS SWAT team. It's really more of just a way for me to categorize how many different teams and individuals are actually involved with solving the SaaS sprawl challenges. So for many of you that have your software asset management team in place, they're probably going to be at the heart of this, the heart of the solution, the heart of wrangling these SaaS applications, but it likely extends beyond that existing internal software asset management solution. For example, leveraging Phil's team and the ITAM team at SHI that are specialists and helping with software asset management, they're an extension to that SaaS SWAT team. They might not wear the corporate letters right on their chest, but they have their own corporate letters and they're part of your team and they're an extension to your team. But so are your legal team and your information security team and anyone that's involved with software purchasing or software audits. They are an extension to that SaaS SWAT team. So at the heart of that SaaS SWAT team, if you do have an existing software asset management team in place, they are going to be the lifeblood of this all. But it requires actually liaisoning with these different teams that I would call them, I would include them and say that they are part of this general SaaS SWAT team within your org.
Okay. Another question came regarding how browsers, all common browsers, can be supported and managed. Do you have to have the requisite plugins?
Good question. So that relates to the last thing that I was mentioning for how Intello pulls in usage. And I think the browser extension always catches a lot of attention. So first thing to know, the browser extension, it's a side dish. It's not the main course. Even without using the browser extension at all, you'll be able to get a ton of value from Intello. So some of you might be listening to this question or heard my presentation, and for your organization, you might not be able to push out a browser extension. You might not be able to have it enforced. But for those that can, an extension to our platform is this browser extension that we built. We primarily support Chrome, but we can support additional browsers as well. And it can be either shared with employees for them to download or enforced by IT and ensured that you can't uninstall it. So it depends a lot on your organization and your setup. Many of our clients have leveraged their mobile device management solution, such as a Jamf or an AirWatch or Workspace ONE, to actually deploy that browser extension throughout the organization and enforce the installation through IT. So it really depends on your setup. We can support most browsers, but it is Chrome primarily. We typically recommend let's set up whatever integrations we have first and then come back to the browser extension, just because it's a little bit more of a lift than the other integrations. And keep in mind, the browser extension, for those listening that didn't ask this question, it's an extension to our platform. It's not absolutely necessary to use.
So we have another question, and I'm assuming this depends, but how long does it typically take to get results, and how many resources would a customer need to allocate to a particular project?
Great question. It is incredibly easy and straightforward to set up Intello. So one of the ways that we differentiate ourselves, and we want to make it really easy to essentially try before you buy and be able to see what that value actually looks like. We're typically up and running with organizations that are a few thousand employees in a matter of hours. That's because we have this integration-based approach to how we work. So just setting up these integrations is really all it takes to start surfacing this data. The value of Intello is connecting all these different pieces of the puzzle to create this one centralized, holistic view of your SaaS application footprint. So the answer is it is extremely simple and easy to set up. The only resources that's required on your end is the admins of the different applications. So to set up an integration, you do need to be an admin on that application. For many of you on your software asset management teams or your IT teams, you probably are the admin or sit within vicinity of the admins within your org. They do need to be involved in order to set up the integrations. The only thing that slows it down beyond that is any internal approvals that need to be made. But the product is really simple to set up. You'll immediately see value within 24 hours.
So we have another question that might be geared towards Phil. What's the raw cost of the tool when it's included as part of a service?
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. So we do have pricing for the tool and service, and it does depend on the size of the organization. So we have a tiered pricing. But to give you an example, let me just give you a quick example of what that might be as a tool basis for around about 1,000 seats. You're talking about around about $1.50 per employee per month. As part of the service is on top of that. and the service is again based on the number of users. So potentially, if you have 1,000 seats, it'd be based on the 1,000 seats, but also it's based on the number of SaaS applications that you have in your environment, and those are tiered from up to 50, 50 to 150, and over 150. And as Barak mentioned earlier, it's quite surprising what the difference is between what you think you might have in your environment and actually what is in that environment. But if anybody needs to have any pricing specifically, please contact your account exec. And there are also some details at the end of this deck, which you can email or actually track. So you can actually ask those questions. So we can come back to you with pricing. And those pricings, as I said, are between standard, professional, and premium as well. So I hope that answers your question, Lauren.
Okay, this one for Barak. Does the tool have the ability to find SaaS applications that are unknown? This person says, we're not an admin because we don't even know it exists.
Great question. And yes, we do. Right. So we spoke about the stat earlier. I'm just trying to find it, that the average organization with over 300 employees has 183 free SaaS apps. The way that we're able to pull these kind of stats and intel is because we help you discover those free SaaS apps, not just the ones that you know about. Now, that might be counterintuitive because you're like, well, how do I set up an integration if I don't know about these applications? The answer is you won't. There's a few different ways that we find that shadow IT. One is our expense management integrations. So we integrate into Concur, Expensify, we can do the CSV uploads. We'll find every single software purchase that way. So the $10 per month, $30 per month subscription that's being expensed to some credit card that you didn't even know existed, we're going to be able to find that spend on those applications through those financial integrations, through those expense management integrations. So one side of this from a shadow IT detection is discovering every application with spend, whether you know about it or not. Now, the second question, and I think this is really what you were getting at with your question that you asked, is the usage side. How do we know about these free apps that employees are signing up for that might not even be paid? The way that we find that is through a number of different sources. The primary one will be depending on if your organization is a O365 or G Suite shop. But depending on if your organization is O365 or G Suite, we're going to set up an integration with Office or with Google. And we're going to pull in every application that employees sign up for or sign into through their corporate credentials. So we're going to automatically discover a whole lot of that long tail of free applications that you may not know about. We're also going to discover any free application that has access through different API permissions into your core systems of record. So that's where that compliance side comes in and that risk scoring, but we're going to identify a lot of the free apps that way. And then finally, we do have that browser extension that we spoke about. The browser extension will identify software usage based on the URLs. They're not based on the applications you know about. So rest assured, we'll find a lot of applications. But more importantly, the SHI ITAM team, as well as Intello, is here to support you through that. It might feel overwhelming when you realize you do have 3 to 4 times more applications than you knew about, and there's even more now to manage. But it's better to know than not to know. And it's really important to understand your SaaS footprint, and we're here to help and make it manageable and make sure that you actually drive increased value as a result of that visibility.
Great. How does Intello work if a customer has multiple environments, say from an acquisition?
Yeah, that's another way that we actually help, right? One of the challenges is when you go through an acquisition, when you acquire a company or get acquired, you need to audit your tech stack and figure out what are the different applications and how do you go about that integration strategy. Intello can integrate into the subsidiaries or the parent account or both to identify all those software applications in use and find the overlap and redundancy. So as you work on the consolidation of those applications into a centralized catalog of apps, figure out what you're going to be sunsetting and what you're actually going to be carrying over and who needs access to what. Intello can actually help because it's so easy to deploy. We're going to discover all that usage. We actually have a case study that we didn't include here with one of our clients who have done a lot of acquisitions who use us every time they do an acquisition. It's the first thing that they do, that their IT team is set up Intello for that subsidiary to identify what their tech stack is, and then to use that information to work on a consolidation strategy for how to get that acquired target's tech stack integrated into the parent org's tech stack. It's a great question, and it's actually something that we specifically help with, and we could set up integrations directly with those subsidiaries.
And Barak, I would like to extend on the top of that from SHI ITAM team perspective as well. We engage with a lot of organizations on mergers and acquisitions or demergers, and exactly the same reason, just to get to grips with anything that's out there. And consistently we've seen, you know, how to do it from an on-premise perspective, but a lot of people forget about that risk of what's in the environment from a SaaS perspective. So joining the two together now gives us that even greater depth of view of those environments for an M&A.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. The last one, would our finance team need to be involved to pull in the NetSuite and expense tracking integrations?
Another good question. It's similar, so this is Barak speaking again. It's similar to the answer before about how do we actually find all these applications and which stakeholders need to be involved. Finance only needs to be involved if they are the admins for NetSuite and your expense management integrations and other applications in order to set it up. That said, we find that the most successful clients of ours are ones that leverage Intello to bridge this gap between IT and finance. And I'm actually going to use this just to speak for a second about this post-COVID world that we all live in. Because of the current economic environment, every organization is taking a new look on IT cost rationalization, right? There is likely close to 30% of wasted software spend within your organization right now. Intel and SHI can together help you identify that and come up with a strategy for how your IT or software asset management team can actually partner up with your finance team to help reduce your IT costs in ways that don't involve any kind of payroll shifts. So it's really important, I'd say right now, this partnership with everything going on. And my suggestion would be to engage finance, even if you don't need them in order to set up the integration, because they will see value, they will get on board, they will be thrilled that you're taking this initiative to save money, because finance likes to save money. So our most successful clients actually do loop in finance. I'd say especially in today's day and age, it's to your advantage as individuals and as an organization to work very closely with finance team, all these different projects. And Intel is here to help with that visibility and that IT cost rationalization exercises, as well as visibility into the usage of applications for remote teams. But I'll save that for a future conversation if any of you want to reach out through the contact information that you can actually see.
Great, thank you. Looks like we're just about out of time. I think this was excellent, very helpful, very timely. Again, I will be sending out to everyone that attended the webinar, I'll be sending out both the slides that we covered and a recording, an on-demand recording that everyone can take a look at afterwards. Thank you again for your time, and I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their day. Thank you, Barak. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and be well. I have
Absolutely.